What's going on, guys? Back at you with another video. Today I want to talk about a knife that, well, you know what it is because you read the title of the video. But it's a knife that I feel doesn't get any love, and I don't think that's because it's not a well-received knife. I just think that's because it gets outshined by its smaller brother. The knife I want to talk about today is the Spyderco Military. Now, this is the military, the full-size military. This is not the paramilitary. It's not a PM2. It's not a PM3. It's not a police. This is the full-size military. I think this knife just doesn't get a lot of attention solely based off the fact that the paramilitary 2 has always gotten the attention. Paramilitary 2 is a great knife. I've had multiple, but I've had one for many years. And I wish I had it here for the video today, but actually my wife has it. She took it from me a few days ago because I was sharpening her Griptilian. And so she took my paramilitary for me to carry. So unfortunately I don't have it for the video, but I do have another comparison to show you. But anyway, this is the military. And you know you're reviewing a knife when I had to adjust my camera stand higher to get the whole knife in the frame. This is a very large knife. This is a very purpose-built knife. You can see in the hand, I've got extra large hands. This gives you an idea of the size this knife is. I got this knife at BladeHQ. This knife is brand new. I have not used this knife. This is still the factory edge. I think I've cut one thing with it here at the house. I don't think I've actually carried this knife. I had a military previously. I've had one before, years back. I did use that knife. I had it for a long time. Got rid of it eventually. I think I gave it away. I think I actually gave it to my brother-in-law, if memory serves. But anyway, I was on BladeHQ looking around the other day at Spyderco's, and I just happened to see this, and it just kind of got me nostalgic, and so I got another one. I know this knife doesn't have a whole lot of interest, again, because of the paramilitary 2, and admittedly, this knife is way too big for most people. I know most people do not want to carry a knife this size, and that's completely understandable. As I said, this is a purpose-built knife. It was made solely for one purpose. And that is, in my opinion, a tactical blade. A blade you would defend yourself with. If you did not have a firearm, or wherever you live, you can't legally carry your firearm, or you didn't have it on you with you that day. Carrying a knife is a lot easier than carrying a gun. So if you were into both, there's a high probability that you will have a knife on you. And that is what this knife is intended for. I actually think on BladeHQ's website, the description of this knife was, they asked the chief designer at Spyderco if his son or daughter was going to be deployed or something to that nature, and he had to design them a knife to take with them, what would he make? And this is what he made. And that's understandable. It would excel at that purpose. I mean, the blade, as you can see, in relation to my hand, I have extra large hands. It's a pretty big knife. Like I said, I got this one on BladeHQ. I paid $210 for it. I think that may be a little pricey nowadays, but it's still a good knife. It's still a very good knife. Kind of get into some of the stuff. It has a 4-inch blade on it. It is a full flat grind, standard Spyderco blade. Full flat grind. It is fairly thick behind the edge. Not super thick, but fairly thick. The cutting edge on it is 3.69 inches. So from here up, 3.69 inches. Plenty of cutting blade. It is S30V. I do think S30V is good steel. Obviously, it's a super steel. It is not my preference. I would much prefer S35. S30V is just a pain to sharpen. I hate sharpening S30V. Uh, I don't have time to sharpen S30V. It's very labor intensive. If you have equipment to do it, if you have a grinder and all that, it is faster to do it that way, but I like to sharpen my knives by hand. Just gives me more contact. I feel like I can get a better edge on them, a little bit more feel with it. And S30V is just really hard to sharpen. It'll take a really good edge and it'll hold a really good edge, but it is just a bear to sharpen. So take that for what it's worth. I don't mind it. I just don't like sharpening it. Again, this knife is really designed for self-defense. As you can see, the blade will lend itself well to that. You have a lot of belly, you have a lot of blade length. Another thing, the tip on this knife, it's such a small tip, I don't know how well the camera will pick it up. It has got a very fine tip on this knife. And that's why I say this in my mind is really only a tactical blade. Not saying that it couldn't be pushed into other roles, such as an EDC knife or something like that, but I would just be very cautious of the tip on this knife. It is a very fine tip, and it would not take anything for me to break this tip off. I could do it very easily. And that's not a knock on steel, on the steel or Spyderco quality. That's the way it's designed. It's a very fine tip. It's really good at piercing. I can only imagine the kind of damage someone could do with this knife. But in my mind, that's why this would really only be a tactical blade for me. Is really because of the tip. I could deal with the rest of the blade and the overall size of the knife, but the tip is so delicate on this knife. I'm hard on my knives in an EDC roll, and I just don't see that tip lasting very long for me. But it's full flat grind, clip point, standard blade. This has a DLC coating on it. The DLC coating for Spyderco is very resilient. I say resilient, that's not the terminology I meant to use. Durable. That would be a more apt terminology to use. It'll hold up. And again, I don't really care about that. I beat on my knives. I don't really take good care of my knives. I use my knives. I don't baby them. So if they get scuffed up, if a year from now all this coating was gone, it wouldn't bother me a bit. You can see on the blade right there, Spyderco CMP S30V. On the offside, Golden, Colorado, USA, Earth. The handle is black G10. It is fairly grippy, not the most grippy. It's not up there with some of the cold steel G10s, but it's still fairly aggressive. This knife's not going to slip out of your hand. It's also not going to eat your pocket up unless you're just taking it out of your pocket and putting it back in, 20 times a day. If you do, it may start eating into your pockets. If it's that big of an issue for you, like I've always said, take the pocket clip off in that area under the clip right here where it will sit. Sand it down just a little bit. That'll solve that problem. The handle on this knife is 5.5 inches overall. So it's a very long handle. I'm going to shut this so I don't inadvertently cut myself. It's a 5.5 inch handle. This knife was made to be used with gloves on. If any of you have ever worked with a folding pocket knife with gloves, if it's not designed for it, it can be a little bit of a pain. This knife was designed with that in mind. It's got a very large handle. As you can see, me holding it like this, I've got 3/4 of an inch of handle sticking out on either side. So you will have plenty of real estate to hold on to. This is one of the most detrimental factors to this knife for not necessarily for me, but I think for the general public, why a lot of people wouldn't consider this knife, aside from the overall size, is the pocket clip. As it comes from Spyderco, it is right hand tip down carry, and that is the only position you can carry it in. As you can see, right hand tip down as it sits right now. No provision at the tail. No provision at the tail or at the top on the other side. That could be a deal breaker for a lot of people, and I wholly understand that. It is an adjustment for me. Like I said, I prefer right hand tip up carry. That's what 99% of my knives are set up as. But it's just a thing. It's a learning curve. Once you get used to it, it deploys just like any other knife. I don't have an issue with it. I haven't run splits, with a shot timer on taking the knives out and deploying them out of my pocket. I don't feel as though I'm any slower with this knife than I am with any other knife of mine. It's just something to be aware of. This knife is a liner lock, not a compression lock. I know everybody loves to talk about the compression lock, and I love the compression lock too. This is a standard liner lock. Why they went with that over a compression lock, I don't know, because I don't know the time history of this knife off the top of my head. But this knife's been out for a long time. Long time. And I think it was just the standard when this knife was introduced. Everything was a liner lock. And I think that's how they designed it, and they just left it like that. And in that roll, it works perfectly fine. Like I said, the cutout to access the liner lock is very generous. Gloves or no gloves, you will have no issue getting your finger up in there to actuate the liner lock. Another thing about this knife, just like the PM2 or the PM3, if you've ever handled one of the Spyderco's Chinese-made knives, the Tenacious or the Resilience, and you know how the jimping on those knives is, it's kind of dull. The jimping on these knives is very sharp. It's very purposeful. It really locks your hand in there. You will not slip off of it. There's jimping there. There's some on the bottom in this little mini finger choil here. And the jimping is the same on the liner lock itself. I don't know how we will be able to see that, but it is sharp. Not sharp to where you'll cut yourself on it, but it really grabs. You shouldn't have any problems actuating the liner lock on this knife. Inside, I don't know how good you'll be able to see it. It does have steel liners, but they are not full steel liners. The liners only run back to the second screw right here. They're partial liners, and they are nested. They're recessed up into the G10 handle, and that is perfectly fine with me. I think this knife, the way it's designed now, is plenty adequate strength-wise for what it was designed to do. When you have a handle this long, like I said, this handle is 5.5 inches overall length. If you added full steel liners to this knife, you're going to be adding a lot of weight. And I think a lot of that would be unnecessary weight for the purpose of this knife. This isn't a knife you're going to be, chopping limbs with or trying to split wood with or anything like that. I don't see a need for full steel liners. Would it deter me if it did have them? No. I would still like this knife just the same. But it is a matter of weight saving. When you're talking about a knife this big overall, you do want to save weight whenever you can. And this knife does it. When you're talking this knife, you have a 4-inch blade with a 5.5-inch handle. The weight on this knife is only 4.2 ounces. I think that is an amazing weight for what this knife is. I have knives that are much smaller than this, that weigh much more than this. So 4.2 ounces for this size knife is wholly doable. I will say I have carried this knife. I haven't really used it much since I bought this one. But like I said, I did have one for years and I carried it a lot. As you can see, this knife is still brand new. There's no wear anywhere on this knife. It only rides so deep in the pocket because of this style clip that Spyderco chose to use. So you are going to have 3/4 of an inch of knife hanging out above your pocket. Just something to consider. And you do feel this knife in your pocket. Not so much because of the weight, because it's a very lightweight knife for what it is. And not so much for how tall the knife is, because it's really not any more tall than a lot of other Spydercos in that regard. But it's just long. And, not to pick on anybody, if you wear man jeans, you shouldn't have a problem with it. But I have encountered some blue jeans in my life that had very shallow pockets that I'm not sure this knife would fit into. I mean, you're talking 5.5 inches from tip to butt as it sits right here. Take off 3/4 of an inch from the top. I mean, you have 5 inches of knife going down your pocket. So it actually, I know that's usually not a thing to consider, but it is a consideration, is are your pockets deep enough to carry this knife? I have carried this one. I don't have an issue with it. Like I said, I really carry this for nostalgic purposes, just because I like it. As I said, it is really a tactical blade for me. That's the only thing I would carry this knife for. I'm not going to be using this for many EDC tasks, although it would be fine at 99% of those, I'm sure. I just don't want to use this knife in that regard, because $200 isn't a cheap knife. I know you can spend much, much more than that on knives, but still, $200 is a lot for some people. You know, I've got buddies who have hard jobs and hard work, and they always carry a knife, but it's always been a cheaper knife. And when they've looked at some of my knives, they just couldn't believe that people would pay even $100 for a knife. And you know, if you're into knives, you know that's really just a drop in the bucket. You can spend whatever you want to. But for this knife being what it was designed for, I don't really want to thump on this knife. I'll carry this knife if I know I'm going to be in a rough part of town, maybe, or something like that. I may take this knife. You know, that's really what it was designed for. The overall length on this knife, open, is 9.5 inches. I'm not sure. Let me adjust and try to get in frame. So you can see roughly how long that would be. From roughly the tip of my finger, it comes up over my wrist about 3 or 4 inches onto my arm. It is a very large knife, but I like it for that. It would excel at what it's designed to do. The action, classic Spyderco action, it's fine. This knife runs on phosphor bronze. This does not have bearings. I don't know if it will focus to where you can see that. It is on phosphor bronze, but it's perfectly smooth. Out of the box, I didn't have to do anything to this knife. It runs just fine from the factory. And another thing I want to mention about the military specifically, it's got the Spidey hole, obviously. This is an oversized Spidey hole. Compared to a PM2 or a PM3, this hole is bigger. I don't remember what the technical measurement is on it. I'm wanting to say it's a 14 millimeter hole. I could be wrong on that, don't quote me. But it is slightly oversized from the PM2 and PM3. And another observation I've had, it's not sharp in a sense of it's painful to deploy, but I do feel like the hole on this one, the edges around the hole are a little bit sharper than on my PM2. That could just be because this knife is brand new and my PM2 is multiple years old. But I don't mind that. I feel like it aids in deployment. And it also helps when you have gloves. That's the reason for the larger thumb hole on this knife, is to facilitate gloved use. It's easier to get your finger in there to get the knife deployed. That's really all I wanted to say. I was trying to keep this video fairly short, like I said, because I know a lot of people don't have interest in this knife, but I do. I think it's a cool knife, and I think if you get the chance to pick one up, you should. Like I said, I think it's a cool knife just in that sense of just a over-the-top, big, fighting, tactical blade. I think it's pretty cool. I've got a few knives right here I was going to show you for size comparison, more well-known knives that you or someone you know is likely to have or have had or have handled, just to give you a size comparison. Let me open this up. Put you right here. Here's another Spyderco. As I said in the start of the video, I wanted to use my PM2 for reference, but my wife has it. This is the Spyderco Tenacious, and if you have handled it or seen one of these, you'll just have to take my word on it. This is roughly the same size as a PM2. I'm wanting to say it may be a 1/10 of an inch shorter overall length than the PM2. I'm not 100%, but it's roughly, we'll just call this the PM2 for size comparison. Put that right there. I'll put them butt to butt so you can see. As you can see, the military is much longer. let me get a more reasonable, comparable size. Again, this is a Cold Steel Recon 1. I've had this knife for years. Pretty popular knife. This is the large or extra large. This is the 4-inch bladed Recon. They are pretty close overall. The military is just a hair longer overall length than the Recon 1, but a very comparable size, same blade length, roughly the same handle length. Those are very close. And then just for humor's sake, here is a Civivi Elementum. Everybody knows the Civivi. Put that right there. You can see it's much, much larger than the Civivi. But yeah, I just want to show you all this knife. As I said, I don't recommend this as a knife to everybody because I don't think many people would have a use for this knife, nor want to carry a knife this large. But I love this knife. I don't know if I were you and I were on the fence about this knife, if I would go out and spend $200 on a new one. But I would highly recommend if you were looking, you know, through used services, something, if you're on Knife Swap on Reddit or Discord or even eBay or something like that, if you find a used one of these for a good price, I would definitely recommend you pick one up. I just think it's a cool knife to have in your collection. And with Spyderco's, a lot of it's collectability. I, for one, I like to have most of the knives in a manufacturer's lineup of a certain family if I can. So in this case, I have a military, I have the police, I've got a PM2, I've got a PM3, so on and so on. I just like to have all of them just for OCD purposes. But yeah, I just wanted to show you all this. If y'all have any questions on this knife, let me know. Like I said, I highly recommend you pick one up if you can find one for a good price, or, you know, if you just got the money burning a hole in your pocket and you want to buy a new one, buy a new one. That's your choice. I will never discourage you from a knife purchase. Probably. There are some I wouldn't recommend. But yeah, if y'all got any questions on this knife, anything to add, anything I messed up that I didn't catch, y'all want to let me know, just drop it in the comments, let me know. If you liked it, go ahead and hit that subscribe, hit that like button. It helped me out a lot. Anyway, y'all have a good day. Thanks.